again. So this morning, earlier we had a session already on service provider integration. I looked earlier to things like Hotspot 2.0, Passpoint, more from an enterprise perspective. And in my job, it's more important to understand how the things stick together than how the actual parts will move. So what I did do is started some Googling, and you get overwhelmed by a lot of acronyms. And I noticed in the earlier presentation there were a lot of those acronyms. So I decided to pull them apart and to see what it means, and eventually find out if it's useful in the enterprise as well. Because we all want to get rid of that nasty captive portal. And the first methods of doing that, so in the early days, but I think 2016 is still the early days, we used captive portal authentication where you put in username and password. So there were some developments in automating that with something called Whisper. I have a slide on that. And where we are moving to is to standardized WLPC enterprise encryption with full .1x with some special authentication methods. So first, very quick about Whisper, what it is. You will probably find it if you look on the internet. It's some XML-based automatic authentication system for captive portal. So it's just like the captive portal, but you have some component on your end device that will do the authentication on behalf of you, which immediately shows the weakness of this system, because you need to have your device modified or run some software on it to make this happen. So basically, forget about Whisper. It's that it appears sometimes that you know what Whisper is. So the next steps are Hotspot 2.0 and Passpoint, and like a good organization, the Wi-Fi Alliance tries to hide the information from the public into nice marketing terms. So basically, Passpoint is the Wi-Fi Alliance program to implement Hotspot 2.0. So, and it's available for a few years already. So one of the questions is, why don't we have this very widely deployed? So what was the issue? What was the reason to make this? So in the cellular network, you have a very convenient way of connecting to the network. Your phone will connect to the cellular tower, it will authenticate, and you get your service. And the idea of Hotspot 2.0 and Passpoint is that you get a similar experience on the wireless network. So your phone authenticates to the wireless network, and it can do authentication, and it will give you the same service. So basically the same we have on the cellular, now available on Wi-Fi networks. If we pull this apart, there are basically two components that are relevant for us as enterprise engineers. First is the network discovery and selection part. So before you authenticate to the network, this will allow you to get information about the network. How can I authenticate on the network? What are the methods? Who should I have a subscription with to get on the network? And then if that's done, it takes over with WPA2 enterprise authentication. So you have a strong authentication, you have strong encryption, one of the things that lacks in current captive portals as well. And third, there will be automated roaming, accounting and billing, which we most times do not really care. But providers do, because this provides them one way to monetize on Wi-Fi. So how does it look in a network? We have the device connecting to an access point, and in the end it will authenticate with the service provider. Many steps in between, but basically that's how it works. And you can see there are multiple service providers and the infrastructure in between. we'll find out how it works. In a step perspective, so for the discovery, the AP will, with .11u, explain that it can do Hotspot 2.0, and it will provide the SSID element in the beacon frame, just like it does normally. So when a device wants to have more information, it can send a GS or a query to the AP to get more about the more information about how to connect to this network. Then the AP will respond with that information. The device sees if it has a subscription to the correct service providers that are offering services at this hotspot, and in the end, it will authenticate to the network with that WPA2 enterprise authentication. So one of the main things, beside of detecting on what network you can connect, is that this one is decoupling the SSIDs and the services. So you can run Hotspot 2.0 on a arbitrary SSID, and because of the beacon information, your device knows I need to connect to this specific SSID. So you no longer need to have an AT&T SSID or a Sprint SSID or a provider SSID. You can share that SSID, which is important, as you all know, to get the broadcasting of SSIDs down. So then there is ePSIM and ePAKA. They both mean that you are authenticating with the SIM card that's in your phone. And bottom line, you will need a service provider to have access to the keys that are stored in your phone to do the authentication. So this only really works with service providers. I did some testing. So there are possibilities to run ePSIM at your home, but what you basically do is you stick your SIM card in this such a card reader, and you will get some careless responses that your chip card will, or your SIM card will produce, and you can replay them to authenticate the device on the network. With modern versions of FreeRadius, I couldn't get it work, otherwise I would have shown you. Yeah, it's only useful in environments for internet providers. And another issue is that still not all phones do support it. So it is a bit limited unless you have a complete control over the device. One other term that comes back are roaming consortiums, and roaming consortiums are organizations that have connections to multiple providers. So you don't need to go to each provider individually to make sure that your hotspot can authenticate the users for that provider, but you can talk to a single roaming consortium and you announce those numbers. So you can also limit the number of roaming consortiums that you put in your SSID information to get authentication done on the network. So practical, there are a few issues, and that is that you need to touch the phone and you need to completely configure the phone in order to make it respond to the correct consortium IDs and the correct authentication information. And you need to have the ePSIM, AKA support in your phone, which is probably fine in countries where they have linked together the service provider with the phone. But in many European countries, you can pick any phone, buy it from a local shop, and then run it with your own subscription. So it is still very service provider focused, so really for the service providers. Will things get better? They probably will, because in the Passpoint release 2, there's something called an online sign-up server, which allows you to get on the network and then be redirected to the online service setup. So you get a logo of your provider, you can click on it, and you can register and get authentication information, certificates, stuff like that, and it will be authenticated. I didn't find a phone that supports this, so again, I couldn't show you in this demonstration. So, in a summary, the Wi-Fi standard, Wi-Fi line standard Passpoint, or the program Passpoint, is about deploying Hotspot 2.0. It consists of automatic discovery, so phones can see how they can authenticate on the network. Then it will use WPA2 enterprise authentication. EAP SIM authentication uses the 3G SIM modules. EAP AKA is for 4G modules. And we still have that device provisioning and support challenge. So, unfortunately, no answer will this be of use in the enterprise. But at least it will get you started and give you an overview of all the acronyms used in Hotspot 2.0 and Passpoint. Thank you.
Thank you.